Today, Dissectors, we are going to look at some apparent animal hauntings, as well as my own experience with a deceased cat. It's said that when animals decide to stick around, most of the time it's due to a strong bond with their master. Just like for us, death is not the end of how they feel for someone, and many believe animals can become a protector from beyond. But what about the animals who died from violence or neglect? These are the ones that are most likely to cause you problems as they struggle with what they endured. So with anger, frustration and unfinished business, even our furry friends can get vengeful. As you stare at this now graffiti-covered ruin, it can be hard to believe that this was once a thriving zoo with many exotic animals inside. The structures highlight the terrible living conditions of the inhabitants, with tight spaces just the tip of the iceberg. There are many tragic stories about the lives lost at the old Los Angeles Zoo, but here are a few. Spaces inside were so tight that a bear and baby zebra broke their necks. One lady wrote a letter to the zoo claiming that during a heat wave she'd seen at least 100 canaries die, while another wrote about wanting to adopt a badger they'd seen desperately trying to dig out of their enclosure with such determination its paws were drenched in blood. One disturbing story is about a 900-pound polar bear with the nickname Ivan the Terrible. The poor thing was so mentally messed up from poor treatment that when two of his companions were fighting over his mate, he killed them and then turned on his mate of 11 years, killing her. That amount of violence and trauma would be enough to cause a human to haunt, so pretty sure the bear might still be around. Paranormal investigators have heard fences rattling in enclosures, while heavy cages swing open invitingly, or maybe menacingly. The sound of animals in distress has also been reported, with moans and whimpers, while shadows of the deceased have been caught roaming on cameras. Here's San Francisco's Presidio Pet Cemetery that we find ourselves next, Dissectors. Situated beneath a freeway that was constructed many years after the cemetery claimed the land, a graveyard holds sacred the bodies of the dead pets of many families and children. And it's not just sorrow that hangs over the small graves like a blanket, but a dense fog, which crawls over the land every night. This cemetery dates back to the 1950s, serving as the final resting place for any pets stationed at the former military base. On this half-acre lot lies the bodies of parakeets, lizards, cats, rabbits, dogs, to name a few. There are rumours that even earlier, the cemetery was used for horses and dogs that served in World War II. Here the ghosts come in many forms, but the most common are men dressed in uniform taking a stroll with a ghostly four-legged friend, companions to the end. In 1858, a night watchman in Edinburgh, Scotland, died of tuberculosis, and on the day of his funeral, his faithful dog called Bobby led the funeral procession to the final resting place at Greyfriars Kirkyard. So strong was the grief of this dog that he stayed at the graveside after the service ended, and it took the caretaker shooing him off for him to leave. But the next day Bobby was back, and filled with loss, he stayed at the graveside of his friend for 14 years. When Bobby finally died himself in 1872, his body was laid to rest in the same cemetery as his master. But this has not changed his routine, as Bobby is still seen to this day, lying next to the headstone of his long-lost friend. This next haunting is a strange one, if not slightly amusing. Esteemed statesman and philosopher Francis Bacon was said to have been travelling at the time he came up with the idea of using snow to preserve meat. So pumped up with enthusiasm to try out his theory, he purchased a chicken and started to push snow down its neck. It was while doing this Bacon suddenly became ill with severe pneumonia, dying of suffocation days later from the build-up of crap in his chest. Now, if this was not strange enough, it gets weirder. You see, ghostly sightings followed not long after his death, but it was not the spirit of Bacon that was alarming people. It was the half-plucked chicken, and it seemed a bit pissed off to say the least. This angry chicken is known to run in circles around London's Pond Square, but will disappear before your eyes if you get too close. thought to be the most haunted house in Scotland during the 19th century. Ballechin House was once owned by Army Major Robert Stewart. While he lived, he believed in the transmigration of souls and that he would one day return as a dog. So obsessed with this theory, Stewart even lived with 14 dogs, hoping that one of them would serve as a vessel for him at some point. After he died, his nephew inherited the property as Stewart had never married or had children. Now, knowing about his uncle's unusual ideas, the nephew decided to have all the dogs shot for fear his uncle might return. As you can well imagine, this must have angered the deceased man and revenge was on his mind. One evening, while the nephew's wife was working in the study, she suddenly became struck by an overwhelming canine odour, followed by a dog-like nudge on her leg. As if to add to her alarm, strange sounds could be heard, from arguments to explosions all throughout the house. Well, the servants and governesses fled the property in fear that things might even get worse. And in 1895, they did. Stewart's nephew was killed by a cab on the very same day that 3 violent knocks shook his door. These are now believed by many to have been a warning of what was to come. When the house was sold in 1896, the new family only managed to stick around for 11 weeks before they ran away, never to return. Over time, reports of a ghostly dog grew. One even reported the spirit of a black spaniel playing with a living dog. And while many guests mention feeling a dog brush against their legs, the most alarming experience was when 2 paw prints appeared suddenly on a bedside table. Due to pranks and other discrediting behaviour that others did over the years, all paranormal encounters were classed as fake. Is this fair? Should the acts of some be the story of the whole property and activities witnessed? By 1932, the house was abandoned with horrible luck following, as in 1963, a fire ripped through the property, destroying it. Now, I mentioned at the beginning of the episode that I'd experienced something strange with a ghostly animal. I'm not one to rush into thinking something weird is paranormal. I like to be rational-minded, but I've had encounters since being a child. This one happened about 4 years ago. I was lying in bed, thinking about getting up, when I felt a cat gently jump onto my bed. At the time, I only had a bulldog named Bonnie, so this was something I wasn't expecting. The cat walked across the covers and then, just as quickly, jumped back off the bed. I thought, well, that was strange, but just put it down to another experience and got on with my day. A couple of weeks later, though, I had a really vivid dream. In the dream, the cat is with me and it's hissing. And I'm saying to my friend, I know you say you can't see the cat, but surely you can hear the hissing. Anyway, I wake up from the dream and discover the cat has been standing on my butt while I was asleep. But as soon as it knew I was awake, it jumped off me and never came back. Now, what concerns me is what the hell was the cat hissing at while I slept, as it seemed to be standing guard over me. I'm still not sure, but if I ever figure it out, I will let you know. The cat is thought to belong to a friend of mine in the UK. She was an old girl, like 20 plus years, who was quite grumpy with everyone. Her claws wouldn't retract and teeth were pretty much gone. For whatever reason, she totally loved me. Whenever I visited, she would be straight up on my lap and purring away. So maybe this is the ghostly animal that visited me. Who knows, as I've been informed by gypsies and mediums alike that the spirits of children and animals are drawn to me. Losing a fur baby is heartbreaking. And to all of you out there who have lost a cuddle monster or food guzzler, my thoughts and best wishes are with you. Pain is pain, no matter the person, animal or situation. Do you have any paranormal experiences with animals, or have you heard a story of one? I'd love to hear about it in the comments below. As always, until next time, dissectors, stay safe out there.